Give you some private time?
Yeah, I got some alone time. Got a
With
room
Mick
I
Ralphs
can go in. Yeah.
Junior.
Don't plug it in.
Are you shitting me?
Oh,
Okay.
gotta be played.
Done.
Oh my gosh.
What's up, everybody? So, if you can name those four riffs, those are some of the four riffs that I heard growing up a lot. So, this is the first video of my favorite guitar players, the guitar players that have inspired me. Let's go. Comes to mind, one of my favorite guitar players, one of the ones who's most inspired me the most, is my dad, Chip Thomas. He came around into the picture when I was about 7 years old. He's technically a stepdad, but I just think of him as dad. And my earliest memories of him are him and my mom sitting in the living room when they were dating. And he would be playing guitar and she would be playing guitar and they'd be singing songs and harmonizing and all that kind of stuff, whether it was the Mamas and the Papas or whether it was Alison Krauss, I think, made appearances there. All sorts of stuff, you know, some of that 70s kind of California hippie music, you know, All the Leaves of Brown, all that kind of stuff, or whether it was Dan Seals or... you know, any of those, Patty Loveless, Vince Gill, and all of that. And then as time went on, I got to see Dad play in his band that he was in at the time. I think I've got some photos there I can show you, and you'll just hear me. But he would play with this band called the Long Riders, and local group, and they'd play around South Texas and all that stuff. You can see he's a big fan of the Telecaster, and gear-wise, I remember he had, I don't know if it's in those pictures, but he had a gray Fender M80, I think it had red knobs and all of that nasty carpet gray. But, and then there was a crate Voodoo tube amp in there somewhere and all sorts of random assortments. And then pedal-wise, he was always getting in and out of pedals, whether it was the Boss stuff or whether it was some of the early boutique stuff. I remember he had a lot of the Menatone stuff early on, and the King of the Brits, and the Howie, and he had a Full Drive back when Full Tone was coming out, Boss pedals. I mean, just all around a gear nerd, gear nut. And so I come by it honestly, as you've probably picked up. You know, I have some early memories of him and his buddy Zach, they would sit around and watch Austin City Limits and the Nashville Network, and they would be, talking about the players and talking about the gear, whether it was John Jorgensen or Steve Warner or whatever. But yeah, so those 4 riffs that I started off with, those are riffs that I sort of always associate with him, whether it was All Right Now by Free or Born on the Bayou or Magic Man by Heart or The Smithereens. Or, not Smithereens, George Satellites, excuse me. And Smithereens was another one, though, that he listened to quite a bit. But yeah, the thing about his playing, the thing about it is, and it's not just it's not just a biased opinion. Thing about it is that I've even in all my years of playing music, I've never come across someone who quite has the ear that he has for finding voicings, hearing the recording and knowing what the voicings are, whether it's a detuning issue or whether it's a capo, for spotting the gear, the subtle differences in gear, knowing what gear someone was playing through, being able, and the real crazy thing to me is that this man has the ability to hear a song, a recorded song, and he can perceive the 3 or 4 guitar layers, because there's often so many layers. He can perceive those layers and then summarize those layers down into one part that one person can play. Now, it's going to keep you busy, and in the context of a band, if the guitar player drops out, in this case him, there's going to be a massive cavern of emptiness there, because he's doing so much as a player, not in an overplaying way, but in a way that is summarizing, rhythm parts, but then also being able to somehow, almost maybe I don't know if Billy Gibbons is the right way to say it, but in a way keep the sound full. And he can take guitar solos like Hotel California or whatever it is, and he can summarize those harmony parts into one bit. He can take the splicings and shove it together. And even to this day, whenever I play Hotel California or one of those classic rock covers that I heard him do enough, I'm actually not even playing the guitar parts as they probably are on the record. I'm playing them how I heard him do them all those years. So it wasn't just his playing in a country band and getting into the singular parts, but also his ability to combine them has a lot how to do with how I play a lot of cover songs even now. Country, classic rock, you name it. So, and I think that that's an insanely valuable skill. It's a highly underrated skill. And it's a skill that not a lot of people actually possess. I think it's a Jeff Beck line or something, talks about your ear staying ahead of your playing, and as long as your ear is there, your ear can take you places that your hands would never go otherwise, something like that. Rest in peace, Jeff. But yeah, so he really, really is, in my opinion, objective or otherwise, and I might be biased, but I really haven't come across hardly anybody in my career that can do it quite as well as he can, or there might be like 1 or 2 others that can listen to a song and just have it, 80% there after a listen, and then even if it's consolidating parts, he can have that thing locked in. So that's a tremendous skill set. And it makes for an immensely valuable player in the context of a band too, because you can't replace a guy like that. And in my career, that's what I've always aimed to be, and I think anyone in any field tries to be irreplaceable as much as possible. That's how we get along. So at any rate, his influences, you played the licks earlier, but his influences, I know he talked a lot about Howard Leese from Heart, talked a lot about Free and Bad Company, which basically almost entirely means Paul Kossoff. And then on the country side of things, really Pete Anderson was cool, and I remember hearing him talk about Albert Lee a little bit. You know, more of the concise players. He was never one to be busy. He didn't like busyness, and I think that's because he doesn't like busyness so much, because he's trying to, even as a listener, even when he's not playing, you know, you want to have something that you can hold on to. And so there's a beautiful profundity in the simplicity of what he would listen to, I think, and how he would shrink all those 3 and 4 layers down of guitars into one part that could be played, and you could go from rhythm to you know, lead a few frets away. Not one of them things where you're going from, you know, down here at the 1st, 2nd, 3rd fret up here to the, you know, 12th and 15th. That just, you're not going to get a full sound with a band if you're the only guitar player by doing that. You know, that's why playing a song, and he never played Sweet Child of Mine, but that's like, in my experience, playing Sweet Child of Mine, when you go from up here to down here, it's just such a wacky thing. And so I've, not only because of my fat fingers, but like playing Sweet Child of Mine, I've always tried to interpolate the lick down here, because I know most of my business is, if I'm the only guitar player, the only business I'm going to have is right. So something along those lines. I like to think anyway that that's how he would maybe in some way approach it. But yes, and then of course, as far as the gear goes, like I said, the dude has been through and forgotten more about gear than most of us will ever know. He tends to build his own guitars and prefers his own guitars. He loves P90s. He loves brass hardware. He's not big on Strats. He's not big on neck pickups, but if it has to be a neck pickup, it needs to be it needs to be workable. He tends to build, you know, junior style instruments, or at least styles of instruments that favor the bridge and have flexibility in the bridge, whether it's tone sweeping on the tone pot, or whether it's active circuits to push mids or to boost output, or phases and phasing and stuff. It's a lot of that. And then tremolo wise, he never really prefers floating tremolos, which I do, but that's just a taste thing, because, you know, everyone's a little different. But all in all, a wonderful guitar player, and definitely arguably my first major influence for sure. He let me borrow one of his Ovation acoustics for a number of years, and even when I left it out on the curb one night, amazing I ever recovered from that. But bought me my first Strat, and loaned me gear, still loans me gear. I got a couple of pedals down here that are his. So yeah, that's how I would summarize that. You know, classic rock, heavily influenced, some of the cooler country stuff. You know, your 70s guys, your Helicasters, and just you know, Elvis and stuff that was iconically, profoundly simple, but not without needing its homework. And again, a wonderful consolidator of parts. An amazing ear, one of the best ears ever. So, yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind. I hope that I wish that there was a way for you to, you know, hear him play and check out music. He's just, you know, kind of been more of a private individual, and honestly, in this day and age, that's so rare, it almost makes it even more valuable. So, hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time for part 2. Probably of, I don't know, we'll do a dozen. I think if I can't get it done in a dozen, I don't know what else to do. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you soon.
There it is. Yeah. Maybe
thing.
we end up with the Gibson, then it would make the difference. But
Part of the deal too is, like I said, like the sparkle. Like this speaker has no sparkle really. The nailer, I don't think of it as a sparkly deal, and the amp itself is not that way either. It's like there's a reason I never use this speaker with this amp, but it's in there for now. But I just sold it the other day, so.